I want you to take a step back in time with me, back to the year 2013. Where were you? Who were you? What were you doing? And what were your thoughts about the enormous cultural shift that was happening in our society? Were you one of the OGs who was calling it out from day one? I know I wasn't. One person that was, though, is Peter Hitchens. Peter Hitchens is a man that started off as a Trotskyist, a Marxist, but eventually, as he got older and wiser, he became more of a conservative. Hitchens has been all over the world and seen all kinds of global crises and is one of the most knowledgeable voices in the world regarding geopolitics and cultural issues. But the reason why I think this video is so important is because it's an eerie and stark reminder of just how much we not only leaned into this as a culture, but we dove headfirst into the cultural revolution without knowing. And let me tell you this, guys, some of the wisdom that Hitchens drops towards the end of this video gave me chills down my spine. This is going to be a controversial one, so I can't wait to read the comments on this.
Peter, you've obviously bemoaned the decline, the moral decline of Great Britain. I mean, is it the decline of Christian values that you're talking about primarily?
Well, Christianity more or less collapsed in Europe after 1914 in the First World War. And when it ceased to exist, all kinds of other things rushed in to take its place. But mostly what's rushed in to take its place is what I call selfism. The idea that we are all sovereign in our own bodies, that no one can tell us what to do with our own bodies, that everything that we do is okay, provided we think we aren't harming anybody else. Quite often the truth is that we are harming other people, but we're hiding it from ourselves.
But who gets to decide what's corrupt? So, you know, drinking, drugs, gay sex, I mean, sort of where do you draw the line? Well, what seems totally arbitrary.
Where do you draw the line? You draw the line fundamentally, as far as I'm concerned, around about the Sermon on the Mount and those instructions given to us. And I have absolutely no shame in saying that I believe that the Christian religion was the greatest possession which the human race had, which it's now, in large parts of the world, rather busily throwing away.
I'm a firm believer in do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I just think there's more doing unto that's possible in my philosophy than yours.
Well, I know that.
I think
you do an awful lot of things unto other people and indeed to yourself.
Consent matters and harm
that's your
matters.
affair, but it's not the same question.
Consent matters and harm matters. If there's consent and no one is being harmed, it's no one's business what an individual chooses to do with his or her body.
Yes, but it's so essential to answer this. The people who say that they're not doing harm are almost invariably deceiving themselves. The people who divorce and say, oh, the children are happier as a result.
And the government should rush in to prevent people from being self-deceptive, if that's indeed what they're doing?
The teenager who takes drugs and becomes mentally ill and ruins his own life and that of his parents is doing harm to other people. But at the time they do these things, they say, no, my body is sovereign. I am a completely autonomous person. I don't harm anybody else. We lie to ourselves about this all the time. I lie to myself about it. You all lie to yourselves about it. You lie to yourself about it.
So what
we
about
know that we
abortion,
harm other people, but we hide it
Let me go
ourselves.
to Jermaine Greer.
This is the system that Peter would like to defend. And this is the system that I have spent my life opposing.
No, it's your misrepresentation. It's your misrepresentation of the system I would like to defend. It isn't the system.
Could I characterize the system you would like to defend? It's the conservatism of ick. I don't like that, therefore you should not be allowed to do it. I don't approve of drinking. I don't use drugs myself. I don't suck dick myself, therefore you should be legally prevented from doing those things.
Well,
that's radical. Yeah, that is not conservative.
And what's so brilliant about that? Because there are things I think that we see around us that we do not.
Pretty brilliant.
There are things that we see around us that we do not like, and if we don't act to stop them, then we're guilty.
But I don't like it isn't a good
place.
enough reason to use the force of the state to stop it. I don't like cunnilingus. I'm not going to use the force of the state to prevent that from happening.
It's fantastic. The ease with which someone can fill a room with laughter by just being rude and unpleasant.
I'm not being rude. I'm carrying it.
It's not particularly clever.
You see, this is an indictment on Australian culture, and I've said this many times on this channel, but we are not the best when it comes to having cultural discussions. And it just goes to show in the fact that all this guy here is doing, Dan Savage, I think his name is, he's just being crude and vulgar. Whereas you've got Peter Hitchens here, who is a very learned man who's been all around the world of immense wisdom. Yet the audience chooses to exalt the man who's on stage talking about how great a blowjob he gives.
With the growing trend of internet hookups, sexting, and the prevalence of apps which combine smart devices with GPS tracking and offer the closest potential suitor for a quick, cheap, and purely hedonistic encounter, we have armed our generation with all the tools and platforms to normalise a culture of instant gratification. Is society so driven with personal pleasures that we're eroding the values of human relationships and reality-based interactions?
Hookup apps are little things on your phone where you can use GPS and you can say, I'm here in this location at this time, and you can see who's nearby. And if somebody is of a like mind and would like to hook up with you, you can hook up. There's a lot, people have a sort of a moral panic about these apps. I think that's out of all proportion to what they actually do and the impact they actually have in a lot of people's lives. Usually the people who are fulminating about them or most concerned about them are people who haven't used them and don't know what actually goes on during those interactions. There are a lot of terrific, long-term, stable, loving relationships that got their start with a sleazy meeting. If your parents met because they were stoned out of their minds and had a hookup, they're not going to tell you. They're going to make up some bullshit story about the mutual friend that introduced them named Mary Jane. And that's really the only thing that, I know a lot of people who are in long-term, stable, loving relationships, even marriages now, who met via hookup apps. And we need these apps because we have said now that it is not okay to hit on people at work, not okay to walk up to somebody on the bus or the street and ask them for their phone number. We've defined these things rightly so to make the world safer for women.
I'm sorry, but who is we? Who are the moral authorities that decided that we can't hit on people at work anymore or walk up to somebody in the street if you find them attractive? I mean, a significant amount of people actually meet their partners at work. Every single one of my ex-girlfriends I've actually met at work. Like, since when did we decide that we were going to do away with human interaction and all just be like little online cyborgs?
Peter Hitchens, I'll just bring you in here. You listen to that. I mean, do you see anything sort of wrong with this concept of hookup apps?
Oh, you're setting him up. You're setting him up.
I'm going to get on Grindr and see who's on right now in this room.
Do you want me to say anything or not? It seems to me that when the intimacy is something which is profoundly private, and often if people are mistreated when they're intimate with other people, they are severely damaged. And the idea that sexual relations can be conducted in this casual and mechanical fashion is extremely cruel and crude and dismisses the concept of human love from a very important part of our relations. And I think that's a pity. He doesn't think it's a pity. He wants a crude and as far as I'm concerned, individualistic, unrestrained,
and
totally selfish world. There is a definite difference between me and him. I'd just like to emphasize it. I think a society that... society in which his ideas rule will be one you will very much regret having created.
Now, that's an interesting one, and it's interesting how he has to explain what exactly dating apps are, because this is right at the inception of apps like Tinder. Tinder only became available on all devices in 2013, and in 2015, it was the 5th highest grossing app in the App Store. In 2019, it was the 1st highest grossing app. So obviously the highest grossing app, if it is an app that encourages short-term hedonistic gratification and transactional sex, then it's going to have a profound impact on our culture. And it really appears as though it has, because we know that relationships are shorter and shorter. Divorces are more prominent. The birth rate is currently plummeting. And that's not to say it's all from the dating apps, because there are many different factors at play. It's not a univariate analysis on that one. But you can bet that these apps are having an enormous impact. So it's very interesting to see one party very flippant about the impact of these apps. And Peter Hitchens saying a society in which his ideas rule will be one you very much regret having created. Quite eerie if you're somebody who thinks that transactional sex and the rise of that and the destruction of the family and all of these bedrock institutions of our society is a net negative. And guys, this is not me on my high horse, because if, like Peter Hitchens says, the rules are no sex before marriage, there is a special place reserved in hell for me. However, despite being a part of the problem, it is also possible to look at statistics objectively and look at what's happening in our culture objectively and to think, maybe this is a net negative. Interested to know what you guys think, that's for sure.
Do you think it's possible that the women's liberation movement has gone too far away from the primary role of women to nurture and raise their children? The current role of mothering is being performed by paid caregivers, and my observations are showing me that there is a direct correlation between narcissism rising in the population and early separation of mother and child. The women who can do it all tend to have children with narcissistic traits. We ship our kids off to strangers to raise them and wonder why everyone is tired and depressed. We are allowing narcissists to rule our world, we're allowing the narcissists who currently rule our world to tell us how to raise our children.
Well, clearly we need to re-enslave women.
You are.
That's the solution.
Kimberly, you are fantastically brave. Be careful on your way home. The feminists will get you for that. But of course it's true. This extraordinary pressure to hand over young children to paid strangers while their actual mothers are
Wait, why do the women have to do it if it's such an important job?
Dan
has done a fine job raising his child.
Shall I tell you a very simple reason why? It may not apply to you, but in a lot of cases they're better at it. There, you see. Heresy.
Jermaine, let's hear from you.
But it's true.
What world
Anybody who's been involved in raising children knows that women are better at it.
Oh, my God. That's just crazy.
You can't even say it, even though it's true.
Bit of a weird moment there, because it was a good question, and it did seem like a very brave question. And when Peter Hitchens said that she was brave, she said, "Oh no, you missed my point." I don't think you did miss your point. I think maybe you failed to articulate yourself, because everybody in the room seemed to get the same point. But what a perfect example there of the intolerant and regressive left that have absolutely zero patience for women who just want to be mothers. And an even more perfect example of the utter lunacy and the diversion from truth that we are suffering in today's society when Peter Hitchens simply says, women are better at raising children, which, shocker guys, they are. And they act like he said something absolutely crazy, like men can menstruate or something. Women just know what to do with children. They pick that little thing up, they hold it, they pat its back, they know what to say to it. They're incredible like that. And a lot of men are not. My older brother, for example, is an absolutely perfect case. When he meets little kids, he tries to shake their hands and say, "How are you?" And it's obviously not to say that all women are like that or all men are like that, but speaking in generalities, women are much, much better with children than men. So I don't see why it's all shocking and offensive. It's like one of the most glorious things in the world is the innate feminine proclivity towards nurturing and to be able to look after little children. It's not slanderous to say that.
Just keep your eyes open, and when the moment arrives for your generation, if it arrives for your generation,
all revolutionaries,
it'll identify itself to you.
All revolutionaries claim to be fighting against the oppression of other people when in fact they're fighting for their own personal advantage.
Okay.
A question for Peter. I'm fascinated by your conversion from revolutionary to authoritarian, and so I wanted to ask, how did this turnaround in your personal values occur, and was it an epiphany, or was it a series of doubts that eventually weighed on you and convinced you that you were wrong?
Well, hang on a minute. First of all, revolutionaries are tremendously authoritarian. It's revolutionaries who build gulags and set up the KGB. Revolutionaries are far more authoritarian than I am. But the fundamental reason why I no longer hold the infantile views which I held in my late teens and early 20s is precisely that I grew up. The thing which astonishes me is that so many of my generation did not grow up. And still, while they're drawing their pensions, they have revolutionary opinions and attend Rolling Stones concerts.
What
is wrong with these people?
How do you hope to bring about the world, to return the world to the state you would like to see it in without authoritarian means?
I gave that up long ago.
It would only
make me miserable. I know that you people have won. I just all that I seek to do,
which is why you have to be gay married now and use drugs now with the rest of us.
No, all that I seek to do is to tell the truth about you and what you want, while it's still allowed to do so, because
now, Peter,
you are so fantastically intolerant.
What do you mean when you say you people?
I mean the Cultural Revolution. I mean the cultural and moral revolution which has swept the Western world since the collapse of Christianity. Which
I'm not intolerant.
Has changed our societies, as anybody who's lived through it knows, out of all recognition in the course of 50 years, and in my view, for the worse. He's part of it, she's part of it. For all I know, you're part of it, but I am not.
Okay, now, you're paranoid and you're projecting by saying we are intolerant.
You see, this is the intolerance. I am, because I hold an opinion different from his, he has become suddenly a qualified psychoanalyst who can tell me that my opinions are not opinions which I am entitled to hold,
You're
but
entitled to your opinions.
but are a pathology.
Smears.
And this is the absolute seedbed of totalitarianism. When you start believing that the opinions of other people are a pathology, then you are in the beginning.
You're the one sitting there pathologizing other people's choices.
That leads to the secret
You are the
police
one
and the
sitting
gulag.
there saying
Because
that
you
society
cannot
is sick and damaged.
You cannot imagine
because
that
other
anybody
people are
else.
now as free as white men used to be.
You'll have the whole world to yourself, Sid. You cannot imagine that anybody else is entitled to hold a view different from yours without having some kind of personal defect. That's what's wrong with you.
Okay,
He's filibustering.
Yeah. So you get a chance now.
You are absolutely entitled to hold your opinions, but
That's not what you really think.
Well, hang on.
You're just saying that for public consumption.
Peter, let him finish, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
You sit there pathologizing other people's choices. You sit there saying that other people being free to live their lives by their own light in some way oppresses you when it oppresses you in no way whatsoever. You are free not to get gay married. You are free not to use drugs. You are free not to drink. You are free to stay married to one person for the rest of your life. You are free to stay home and raise your wives' children so they always have a parent by their side. You are not free to sit there and say that other people being just as free as you are to live their lives and make their own choices in some way is damaging you personally, in some way destroying society. People are freer now, happier now. It's a less intolerant world than it used to be because people like me are now empowered to look at people like you and say you are full of shit.
It's the rally.
Okay.
It's a rally.
Hold on. We actually do need to hear.
While you do this, I can't talk. While you do that, I can't talk, and you know it. And that's to your shame. Because silencing opponents is a very wicked thing to want to do.
You've been a lot of things tonight, but you've not been silenced.
This is very personal. I'll reply to it. I am a very rich and fortunate person. And I'm coming towards the end of my life anyway. I can personally escape many of the consequences of this. But most people can't. They can't afford to. And I leave aside some of the things you mentioned, but a society in which the use of illegal drugs is widespread and unrestrained is one in which everybody is affected by the consequences, whatever they themselves do. It's like that ridiculous bumper sticker, don't like abortion, don't have one, to which my reply has always been, don't like murder, don't commit one. The fact is, if a society permits things to happen which damage the lives of many people who, as I've said earlier, as a result of the selfish unwillingness of those who do those things to recognize that they have
forcing women to give birth against their will damages women.
We have those of us who oppose the Cultural Revolution and think that it's a mistake are entitled to say so for the moment.
You are entitled to say so.
For the moment.
You will always be entitled to say so.
One of the things that I admire most in people is courage and bravery. And you may not agree with everything that Peter Hitchens says, and I certainly don't myself. And things are really changing in the modern world. And I think that we have to have solutions that are based on a modern lens and a modern perspective on the world. And going back to a pre-World War I society is not looking very likely at the moment. But my word, I admire Peter Hitchens' ability to be able to be steadfast and stand for what he believes in. Because like I've said in this video, he's a man that has been eerily right about a lot of things. So hats off to you, sir, and hopefully we can slow this train down so that your predictions don't come ultimately true. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you would like access to uncensored, exclusive content and to join the Rattlesnake TV community and support the channel so that I can bring the best content possible to you as often as possible, then please consider hitting the link in the bio, rattlesnaketv.locals.com, and support the channel. And if you want to watch another clip, click right here. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, if you get value from these videos, then click right here. Until next time, I'm Jake. This is Rattlesnake TV.